Welcome to the deep dive. We take complex information and, well, we break it down for you. Today, we're tackling a really human topic, one that's often misunderstood: the physical process of dying. Our goal here is to shed some light on what actually happens, what you might expect at the end of life, hopefully turning some of that fear into understanding.
Exactly. And we're drawing on some great insights today, particularly from Affinity Cares. They provide a pretty clear roadmap of the physiological changes, as the body prepares, and understanding these stages, it really can lessen anxiety, not just for the person going through it, but maybe even more critically for the caregivers, the loved ones, right there beside them.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. Affinity Cares mentions that, yeah, everyone's different, but there are common changes that happen physically. What's the sort of big picture theme as the body starts this final journey?
It's actually quite fascinating. The main thing is this gradual slowing down. The body seems to almost instinctively conserve energy as the vital organs, well, their function naturally declines. It's not like flipping a switch. It's more of a series of natural shifts, often gentler than people might imagine.
A gradual slowing, conserving energy, that makes sense. So what are those very first signs, the kind of things you might see maybe weeks or even just days beforehand, that signal this slowdown is starting?
Well, one of the most common things is really noticeable fatigue and weakness. The person just sleeps a lot more, much more than usual. That's the body holding on to its energy
Right,
reserves.
just less energy available.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And linked to that, you often see reduced appetite and thirst. Their metabolism is naturally slowing down, so they just don't feel the need for much food or water. And it's really key for caregivers to know this usually isn't like hunger or thirst as we normally experience it. Forcing food or fluids can actually be uncomfortable for them.
That's such a crucial point. So trying to push eating isn't helpful. What about breathing? Does that change early on too?
Yes, breathing can change. It might become a bit irregular, maybe shallower. Sometimes there are these brief pauses, periods of apnea they're called. It's just the respiratory system starting to slow down along with everything else. Again, knowing this is part of the natural process can really ease worry for the family. They aren't necessarily struggling.
Okay, so those are the early, maybe more subtle signs. But as things progress, as death gets closer, the changes become more noticeable, right? And sometimes maybe a bit more unsettling to witness.
That's true. As the body moves further into this process, you see more significant shifts related to, well, vital organs winding down. The circulatory system is a big one.
How so? What happens there?
The heart just becomes less effective at pumping blood around. So the extremities, hands, feet, they might feel quite cold to the touch. They might look pale, or sometimes even get a sort of blotchy, purplish look. That's called mottling. Blood pressure usually drops quite a bit too.
Because the circulation itself is slowing right down.
Precisely. Less oxygen, fewer nutrients getting to the tissues. It looks dramatic, but it's usually a passive change for the person.
And the skin itself, apart from the mottling or coolness, any other changes?
Yeah, sometimes the skin can look quite pale overall, or it might get a sort of waxy or even glossy appearance.
Mm.
Again, it's all related to that reduced blood flow. These are visual cues that big changes are happening inside, but not necessarily signs the person is in distress.
Okay. And something that can be difficult for families. What about loss of control, like bladder or bowels?
That's very common,
Yeah.
yes. As the muscles throughout the body relax, including those that control the bladder and bowels, incontinence can happen. It indicates the body isn't processing waste in the same way. It's just another sign of the body letting go. It really underscores why sensitive, dignified care, like hospice provides, is so important. It's a physiological shift, nothing more.
Right. So we've talked about the body system slowing. What about the brain? What's happening cognitively? Because those changes can be really hard for loved ones.
Absolutely. The brain's activity slows down too, and that leads to shifts in consciousness and thinking, confusion, disorientation. These are very common, particularly in the last days. They might not recognize people clearly, or they might talk about seeing things, having vivid dreams or hallucinations. It's helpful to remember this is the brain functioning differently, not necessarily fear or upset.
And what if they seem less responsive, like they don't react when you talk to them or touch them? Does that mean they can't hear you or feel your presence?
That's a really common worry. They might become much less responsive to sound, touch, even just someone being in the room. But the source we looked at, Affinity Cares, really stresses this. It doesn't automatically mean they're unaware or uncomfortable. It reflects the brain's declining activity. But gentle talk, a soft touch, maybe playing familiar music, these things can still be deeply comforting, even if you don't get an obvious reaction.
So presence still matters.
Immensely. And eventually, often in the final hours or days, the person might slip into unconsciousness. This is usually very peaceful, just the higher brain functions shutting down.
Okay, so we're getting to the very final stage now. Organ systems failing. What are the key things happening right at the end?
Well, the respiratory system often shows the most dramatic changes. Breathing becomes very irregular. It can seem quite labored. You might see periods of gasping or something called agonal breathing.
Vaginal breathing. That sounds intense. What exactly is that? And is it distressing for the person?
It can look like shallow, irregular gasps, yeah, sometimes with quite long pauses between them. It can definitely be alarming to see or hear, but it's understood to be more of a reflex. It's like the brainstem's last automatic effort. The person is typically deeply unconscious by this point, so it's not thought to be distressing for them. It's a strong sign death is very close, though.
Okay, a reflex, not active struggling. And the heart.
Right alongside that, the heart muscle weakens. It just can't maintain a proper rhythm anymore, and that eventually leads to circulation stopping completely, cardiac arrest. The heart stops beating.
And when the heart stops.
Then blood flow to the brain stops. Brain function ceases very quickly. The person won't respond to anything. That loss of brain function, or brain death, is really the marker that all body systems are shutting down. That's the final transition.
So we've walked through this whole process, this gradual slowing and shutdown. How is the actual moment of death defined, and what happens right after?
Medically speaking, death occurs when the heart stops beating permanently and all brain activity ceases. Those vital signs are gone. Breathing stops completely. The body will then naturally start to cool down. It's often described as a very quiet, still moment.
And then there are those post-mortem changes people might have heard about, like rigor mortis. What should people know about that?
Right, rigor mortis is one of the first things. It's just a chemical change in the muscles that causes them to stiffen up. It usually starts within a few hours. It might last for, say, half a day or a full day, and then the muscles relax again. It's temporary, completely natural, not a sign of anything other than the body's processes after death.
Good to know. And then over time.
Then decomposition begins, which is just the natural breakdown of tissues by bacteria and enzymes. How quickly that happens depends a lot on the environment, like temperature and humidity.
Yeah.
Looking at the big picture, understanding these final steps, the heart stopping, the cooling, rigor mortis, it really helps demystify it. It frames it as a natural biological end, which can bring some peace.
Absolutely. Knowledge replacing fear. Now, we've focused heavily on the physical, but obviously the emotional, spiritual side of this journey is huge. And that seems to be where hospice care really steps in.
Oh, absolutely essential. Hospice is so much more than just managing physical symptoms, though they are experts at that. Ensuring comfort is paramount. It's truly holistic support,
Yeah.
tailored for the person and their family.
Can you give some examples? Like, how do they handle pain specifically?
Well, they are masters of pain and symptom management. They work constantly to keep the person comfortable, whether it's pain, breathing difficulties, nausea, anxiety, whatever comes up. They're adjusting medications, trying different approaches, always focused on relieving any distress. Comfort is the absolute priority.
And beyond the physical, what about the emotional weight of it all for everyone involved?
It's immense, isn't it? Hospice teams usually include people like social workers, chaplains, counselors. They provide emotional support, counseling, sometimes just a safe space to talk, to process grief, to say goodbyes. They understand the really complex emotional landscape that surrounds dying.
And crucially, they support the family too, right? Not just the person who is dying.
Completely. They recognize that caregivers carry a huge load. So they offer practical advice, help navigate tough conversations, maybe arrange respite care so family members can get a break. And the support often continues, even after the person has died, with bereavement counseling for the family. They really walk alongside the whole unit.
You used the word holistic earlier. How does that play out with things like someone's spiritual beliefs or cultural practices?
That's fundamental to their philosophy.
Yeah.
They really strive to understand and respect each person's individual background, their beliefs, their values. They'll help facilitate rituals if requested, connect people with spiritual advisors, or simply create an environment that feels peaceful and dignified according to that person's wishes. It's about honoring the individual. And sometimes it's about helping fulfill last wishes too. Maybe seeing someone specific, or finishing some small piece of personal business, or just having quiet time.
It really sounds like hospice provides this essential layer of compassion and comprehensive support, ensuring the human experience is cared for even as the physical body declines. It lets families focus on connection, dignity.
Exactly, on what matters most in those final days and hours.
So, wrapping this up, this deep dive really underscores that dying, while it's complex and individual, is a natural process. And understanding the stages, what's actually happening physically, can genuinely reduce fear.
It really can. And that sense of peace is so strongly supported by good hospice care. It's not just about being pain-free, it's about that comprehensive emotional, spiritual, psychological support too. It allows everyone involved to focus on comfort, on connection, on ensuring dignity right to the very end.
It makes you think, doesn't it? If we can understand this process, this natural transition, maybe even demystify it a bit, how does that shift how we live now? How does understanding death allow us to live more fully, more compassionately in the present?
That's a powerful thought to leave with. For you listening, we hope this exploration offers not just information, but maybe a shift in perspective. A little more understanding, a little less fear around one of life's most profound transitions.